Good evening. Man is a very complex creature. And you see it from the creation story. The Hasidic masters pointed out a difference how the Torah describes the creation of animals, birds, fish, from how the Torah describes the creation of man. Now everything started from earth or water. So Hashem said to the water that the water should sprout fish. So therefore there was what we may call some kind of an evolution, where from water turned into fish. But it was all by the command of God. And then he said to the soil that the soil should give forth animals. And popping up from the earth were animals. And that could also justify what the scientists call the evolution story, even though religious Jews don't believe necessarily that is the way the scientists describe it. There are a lot of problems with the scientific explanation of evolution. But if scientists find the connection between the flesh of mankind and soil, the way Hashem described the creation of animals, he said the soil should give forth animals, and animals popped up from the soil. So if it was a speedy process or a long time process, that's another debate which we're not going to get into here today. But when it came to the creation of man, the Torah says that Hashem gathered Ofer min Hadama. He gathered the soil, and he shaped the body of man from the soil. And after the body was shaped, Hashem blew into this body life. So Hasidic literature points out this is different than the way it's described about animals. The animals, it says that Hashem said to the soil should come forth animal. And when the animal was formed, it was with its life force in it. There was never a blob of animal, just materialistic, physical body of animal. When the animal was formed, it was a life, a vitalized animal. But when Hashem formed man, first it was a lifeless, physical, material body. And then in this material body, he put in life. And this life is in the image of God. So Hasidic literature wants to point out that's why man has the extremes, polar opposites. The materialism of man could be even worse than that of animal. And the spirituality of man certainly is much higher and incomparable, even a different dimension than the spirituality of animals. So on one hand, it's not only that man also is from the soil, similar to the soil that animals are made from. And that's why if a scientist tells us, look at the body of a man, the gene makeup is 98% or so similar to that of animals, well, we all come from soil. But in a sense, Chassidus emphasizes that the way the body of man was formed was just a blob of earth, which shows on even more materialistic and earthiness and a blob of soil, just reshaped and formed in the form of a human. That is even more materialistic and physical and corporeal than an animal. And then he put in the soul. So this is the polar opposites that we have. More extreme than an animal. That's why animals don't have a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Because they don't have issues. Because they don't have such opposite extremes. And we have issues because we have opposite extremes. On one hand, we can be very materialistic, very selfish, and more harmful than the worst of animals. And on the other hand, we're godly, because our neshama is a chelik alakama ma'mamish, is from the godly soul. And that's what it spoke about the first eight chapters of Tanya, which we learned before the summer, describing the godly soul and the animal soul that vitalizes the body. So when we talk about the two sides of man, the one side is the body, but the body, the way we have it, is not just a chunk of flesh. The body also has a soul that vitalizes the body, as expressed in the flow of blood. So the blood circulation that goes in the body shows vitality, similar to the blood circulating in animals. And that gives life to the senses of man, similar to the senses of an animal. So that's where instinct comes from. Instinct is not from the godly soul. That's where anger comes from, ego, lust. Ego, anger, and lust don't come from the godly soul. But it has vitality to it, and it could be very complex, and it may have intellectual justification, an argument why I think I'm the greatest, or why explaining different jealousy that a person may have, and so on. So that is what Chassidus calls the nefesh habahamis, the animal soul, or sometimes nefesh hachiyunis, the natural soul, the soul that gives life to his body. So in that sense, man is similar to an animal in that sense. And even a potential to be worse than an animal, like we explained before. But then on the other hand, we have the godly soul. The godly soul is chelik alakah, is part of Hashem. And this part of Hashem is from where we get our values, ideals, right and wrong. Now, in our day-to-day lives, that's where the struggle is. So sometimes I'm impatient, or I lose my temper, or a person can have ego, or lust, or jealousy, wants pleasure, runs away from pain. That's his natural soul. The animal soul is not bad. Animals aren't bad, but it's natural. It's instinct. It doesn't ask if it's right or wrong. Our body is not interested if it's right or wrong. Our body is interested, is it painful or pleasurable? It is our godly soul that asks, is it right or wrong? It may be pleasurable, but is it right to do it? Our godly soul says it's not painful physically, but is it wrong? So it's not going to bring me any pain, but is it wrong? So that is the godly soul. So now we have this inner struggle that all of us have in one form or another. All of us are different. And, I don't like people who say, well, everybody steals, and everybody cheats, and everybody this, and everybody... Not everybody. All of us, none of us are perfect, but not necessarily does my Yetzer Hara the same as your Yetzer Hara. I know people who are very spiritual, but when it comes to money, they lose it. And I know people, when it comes to very just, but when it comes to women, they lose it, pardon me. So people are complicated. And we all of us have this struggle. It could be with our emotions, with jealousy, with all mishigas. So what Tanya helps us do is, first of all, diagnosis. First you have to know diagnosis. So a certain feeling, where is it coming from? And to be able to compartmentalize, there's this part of me and there's that part of me. That's very important. So it's not that I am bad because I did this, or I am good because I did that. I am bad and I am good because I have a godly soul. And sometimes I allow my natural soul or even animal soul push me in a certain corner, which is not right. So before we talk about healing the inner struggle that is within us, we have to learn how to diagnose it and ask ourselves, this feelings, where is it coming from? Because like we see in the news today, and don't want to get political, but this passion, people screaming on this side, people screaming on that side, or now people were screaming this way, and maybe 10 years ago they were screaming totally the other way. They're screamers. And each side feels totally justified to the degree they're passionate about their position. So we have to learn how to analyze ourselves. Where is this coming from? Where's this drive coming from? Where's this passion coming from? Is it coming from my animal side? Is it coming from my Is it coming from the nefesh habahamis? Is it coming from the nefesh elikiyas? There's a story that I'd like to speak about. One of the great Hasidic Rebbes was called Reb Nachum Chernobler. So way before certainly Americans heard of a city or a town called Chernobyl, as a kid I heard about Chernobyl. How would I hear as a kid know about Chernobyl, born here in the United States? And my parents did not come from the Ukraine. My father's from Belarus, my mother's from Munkach, which is in Zakarpattia. The reason why Hasidic kids know about Chernobyl, because Chernobyl was a Jewish town that had a very big Rebbe. And the first Rebbe of Chernobyl, he lived about 300 years, close to 300 years ago. 250, 300 years ago. And I'm going to share with you a story that he had, where he wasn't sure where a decision that he made is coming from. And he had to pause what he was doing, and he describes how he diagnosed himself and how he diagnosed where this idea is coming from and the other idea is coming from. Now the Racham Chernobyl, day and night, he dedicated to study Torah, daven, and to advise his flock. So he didn't have a job. So how did he live? There were people who sought his advice and blessing, and some of them were wealthier than others, so they would leave money for the Rebbe. Also, the Rebbe had a big shul, and people would come from all over Ukraine to consult him and to absorb his Torah and so on. So that's how he made a living. There was one time when it was pretty tight in the household of the Chernobler Rebbe, Reb Nachum. But it was close to a Yontif, and people were visiting him. And it was especially a night when there were a lot of visitors, and some of the visitors were wealthier people. Especially one person who really, they were counting him, the household of the rabbi, were counting him, oh, Reb Yankel is going to be here, Reb Yankel is going to leave a nice sack of ruble. So they were they were looking forward, the household, were looking forward, oh, Reb Yankel is going to be here, all of our debts are going to be taken care of. And sure enough, Reb Yankel was there, and the Rebbe advised him, and he spoke to him, and the evening went. So many people saw the Rebbe that evening, but for some reason, in the middle of the evening, the Rebbe said, he closed his door. He says, I have to think. I can't see anyone until I give me a few minutes. And so for a half hour, he locked himself in the room, and there's a line waiting outside to go in. And the attendants of the Rebbe said, can we bring somebody in? No, I have to think. He's pacing back and forth. Afterwards, he says, okay, now you can let the people in, and that's how the night ended. After the night ended, the attendant, who he knew, he has to check the drawer of the Rebbe, where the Rebbe, when they put down money, the Rebbe would take it off the desk and put it in his drawer. The attendant goes and checks the drawer of the Rebbe, and there are a few rubles over there. But it didn't look like Reb Yankel was there. Reb Yankel used to leave a couple hundred rubles, and that would cover their debt. He doesn't know what's going on, and decides to ask Rebbe. I don't understand two things. Number one, in the middle of the evening, about midnight, before midnight, you paused for a half hour. You never do that. You see one after the other that come in to see you. And here you paused for a half hour. What was that about? You were pacing back and forth, deep in thought. What was that about? Second of all, I'm sorry, but the Rebbitzin asked me to see what's going on. And the butcher is asking, and this was asking, we owe a lot of money. And I was counting, Rabbi Yankel was here. He probably left the donation. What happened with his donation? I see there's a few rubles, but not. So Rabbi Nachum said, one is connected with the other. You see, when the rich man came, so he told me he's giving 300 ruble, and he put on 300 ruble on the desk, and I gave him blessing because he's supporting the shul, he's supporting me. And I put the 300 ruble in the desk. But right after him, a poor man came in. He's crying to me. He owns the Paretz, the Goyish, a landowner, right? 200. And he has to marry off his daughter, and he promised 100. And he's finished. He waited so long for shidduch for the daughter, and this is going to break up. He has to deliver, and then the parts is going to throw him out of the parts. Is the Goyish Russian landowner? He's going to throw us off. He had a kretschma, that was his livelihood, but he owed money. It was bad times, the winter. Bottom line is, he's going crazy. So the Rebbe asked him, "How much do you owe? How much do you need?" He says, 300. So the Rebbe said, Reb Nachum said, 300. But that's the number that Reb Yankel told me. He's giving me 300, and I have it in my desk. So I said to myself, I'm going to give him the 300. Save this Jew. I'm going to save this poor Yid. I have to save him. But then I thought to myself, wait a minute. Okay, I'm ready to give it away. Maybe I'm ready to give it all away. But why should I give one guy 300? In the night, it's going to come more poor Jews. And it's probably going to be another 10 poor Jews. Maybe I should give him 10, how much? 30. I should give him 30, and the next one 30, and the next one 30, split it. Why should I give him the whole 300? So I didn't know what to do. Was the first thought, where did the first thought come from, or where did the second idea come from? Right? We're talking about our godly soul and our natural soul. The natural soul is more self-centered than the godly soul. So I had to sit down and decide where this. Both sound like mitzvahs, right? Mm-hmm. What's bad here? What could be bad here? I'm doing a mitzvah. I'm going to give away the 300. I'm not going to leave anything for my family or for me, and no. And that thought came to my mind. But then I had a second. But maybe I'm going to give it away. But who said I have to give him? I'll give the next one a little bit. Everyone. I'm going to give him 30. So that's, I wanted to make sure which idea is coming from my godly soul, which is the animal soul. Where is all this coming from? So that's why I asked you to stop it. And I was pacing back and forth, thinking. I came to the conclusion that the first idea was for my godly soul, for my nefesh elokis. And the second idea was already was my animal soul doing his tricks. Why? Because as soon as I got the money, why didn't I think, I got 300, I'm going to divide it to 10 people? I didn't think about that. I gave him a blessing. It didn't enter my mind, 300 right away, I'm going to give it to 10 people. There's a lot of poor people coming tonight. Each one is going to get 30. I didn't think about that. When did the idea come up that I should divide it to 10 people tonight? After this guy hit the lucky number 300, and I'm thinking about giving the whole 300 to someone. Suddenly, I says, no, give this guy 30. And the rest of the night, we'll give it to the other people. That is, I realize that's the animal soul, that's the natural soul, is playing tricks on me and saying, meanwhile, there's going to be a lot of poor people. Meanwhile, don't give it all. Meanwhile, give just 30. So it's holding me back from doing a mitzvah. And that's when, if you remember, I told you to call that guy back in. Yeah, you did. All of us, halavai, we should have the issues of Reb Nachum Chernobyl, right? But a lot of times we think, is it coming from my godly soul? Is it coming from my animal soul? Where is it coming from? Right? So this is what a chassid, that's what they used to say, that's chassid of the Alter Rebbe who wrote the Tanya. He said, the first mitzvah of a chassid is to be smart. You have to be smart. You have to be smart. Why? Because in the Parshas Noach last week we read, it said, "V'hanochash haya arum." The snake was shrewd, chitre, in Russian, chitre. The snake was shrewd, and the snake in our heart. The Zohar says that we all have a little snake in our heart. That's the animal soul has a snake when it gets really bad, because there's different type of animals, and in us there's different animals. The snake is the troublemaker, and he's shrewd. So if you're just dumb, you're not going to outsmart the shrewd snake. So that's why the first thing a chassid, if you want to better yourself, self-improvement, you want to learn Tanya and to analyze yourself, the first thing is you have to be smart. You have to be smart. And that's what we're going to do now. And that's what the Alter Rebbe is starting now in the 9th chapter. So when we start reading inside, first of all, the Alter Rebbe in this first page is speaking about the location. There's a location where it is. You can look in with Eli. Perek Tes. V'hinei moka mishka nefesh habahamis. Where is the place in the body? There's a place where the animal soul, the natural soul, dwells. There's a biological location. Of course, it's a soul, so it doesn't really, but it doesn't really boxed into there. But it's connected with a specific organ, and it's going to say it's connected to the heart. The heart. Who believe it's in the heart, in the left side of the heart. Shumoli dam, where there's blood. Oksiv ki adam hu nefesh. It says in the pasuk that in the soul is in the blood. So which soul is in the blood? It's not the godly soul. The godly soul is not so enveloped in physicality. It is the animal soul. All types of lust or desires for the physical comes from is connected with the heart. Hispitis is boasting, glorifying oneself. Glorifying oneself. This comes from the ego that's in the heart. Anger, kas, it's in the heart. This is about feelings, negative feelings. So the animal soul produces different type of feelings. He's using an illustration of lust, self-glorification, and anger, because these three come from the different sides of the Kabbalah. It talks about Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. The right is kindness, and that's love, is to reach out to things that are attractive. Then there's anger, is to be negative towards things that make you angry, and self-glorification is in the middle. So these negative emotional qualities are connected to the heart. Why? Because the center in the body, the center of where the animal soul dwells, is in the heart. But the heart is the center of the pumping of the blood. So that's because the blood, the warmth that's in the blood, is the animal soul that's in the blood. And that vitalizes the body, and the body has the senses, and that's where all of this comes from. And from the heart, it spreads all over the whole body. And it goes to the head as well. Like circulation, the blood goes to the head as well. So let's dwell on these few lines. Next week we'll try to prepare some more books. And the best thing is if you have your own book. So, what is this idea of the animal soul is in the blood and in the heart? And we're still going to follow that the godly soul is in the head, in the brain. But before we get to the brain, let's first dwell upon this idea that the animal soul is in the heart. Because animal is instinct, right? There's instinct. Instinct is the way the programming of the body, but it's not just dead meat. It's the soul that gives vitality. That's flowing in the blood. The DNA that's in the blood, the programming in the blood. So that's where the animal soul is. It's about instinct. It's also about emotion. So generally in our literature, emotion is connected with the heart. Because the heart reflects emotion better than other organs. But let's focus on these two things, instinct and emotion. The animal soul is about instinct and emotion. How do these two work? It's about it's about self-centeredness. Instinct is self-centered. It's self-preservation. An animal knows about pain and pleasure. An animal doesn't feel another animal's pain, it doesn't feel another animal's pleasure. And we too, from a body, if a person gets a cut, he feels the pain. He may have compassion when he sees someone else in pain, but his nerve endings end in his body. They don't go to the next bit. Hashem didn't wire us that some kind of a Wi-Fi that when someone else is pain, so I'm going to feel actually pain registered in my body. That's because our body is programmed for itself. It's self-centered. It's its own organism. So it feels its pain, it feels its pleasure like an animal. Now, we are also more complex. We have emotions. Animals also have emotions. They have fear. They have lust. So the human side of animal is even more complex. But emotions are also self-centered. Because what's emotion? So let's go, I love someone. It's a feeling, it's an emotion, or an ego, or anger. A person is anger, or any emotion, it's because it touches them. So a person is in love because he's touched by another person. Because he feels it's good for him. So he's in love with something that is good for him. If it's not good for him, it could be something that's good, but it's not for me. That's not going to make an emotion. or anger. I'll be angry if I think it affects me. I may be right, I may be wrong, but if somehow it affects me, I'm going to get angry. People are getting angry now in this climate that's here in our country because they think it's going to affect them. But the same thing is going on, but if I don't feel it affects me, I'm not going to get angry. Glorification, self-glorification. I feel good when people think I'm great. I don't feel good when people think I'm just a nothing. It's self-centered. Emotions are self-centered. Emotions are subjective. It's subjective, it's not objective. We're not looking for some kind of a truth. There's no truth. Do I feel it's good for me? I like it. Do I feel it's bad for me? I'm angry about it. Well, what's the truth? It's a feeling. A feeling is a feeling. That's the way I feel. A person who is emotional, totally emotional, there's no one to talk to. Hopefully, as a human being, he also has some seichel, so he can reason with them. But reasoning it changes emotion, as we're going to speak about soon. But in the universe of emotions, it's about me. It's about the person. So I like or love things that are good for me, what I feel is good for me, and I hate things that are not good for me. I'm angry about things that are not good for me. It's about me. And that's how it's similar to instinct. Instinct is more connected with survival or pain and pleasure. But it's the same idea. It's the universe of self, physical pleasure or psychological experiences that are connected with myself. Now, that's why the animal soul dwells in the heart. That's its place. And the part of the heart that's full of blood. And we're soon going to get into that, what he means by that. Because the heart is always full of blood. So it's blood. Blood is circulation, physicality, and so on. But then he adds that it also goes up to the head. V'gam oile lamoyach shebereish, lachashev olahar behen, ulischakem behem. And these emotions go to the head. This is very important. The emotions go to the head to think about what I'm feeling and to become wise about it. To be wise about it. Because I have an emotion, now sometimes I have to use my brains about how to get what I love or how to get back at someone who I'm angry at. So brains doesn't necessarily mean good. The verse says that there are wise, intelligent people who are for evil. Right? So you have great scientists looking to make bombs that could destroy countries, chas v'shalom. So there's also intelligence in the universe of the animal soul. There's also intelligence, even though the center is emotion, but there's also intelligence there. But the intelligence is secondary to the feelings. Just like the circulation of blood. The circulation is pumped in the heart, and from the heart it's pumped to the rest of the body, also to the head. But when the intellect, the animal soul, intelligence is secondary. It could be very smart, but it's not looking for the truth. Since it starts with emotion, the emotion is the motivator, so therefore he's thinking not only with his brain, but he's thinking with his heart. So it's not pure search for truth. What about the godly soul? He's going to explain the godly soul is in the brain. So what does it mean the godly soul is in the brain? The brain also has blood, we said before. But the brain is a vehicle more for the godly soul than for the animal soul. So therefore, the godly soul is more in the brain. Because the closest in the physical experience, for truth is intellect. Pure intellect, even in the physical word math, it has to add up, and you have to prove it. And you can't fake it. It either adds up or doesn't add up. In this complex mathematical calculations, you have to prove it by it has to add up. Similarly, we have to ask ourselves what is right and what is wrong. It's not what you feel. This idea, follow your heart, is not the Jewish way. What do you mean, follow your heart? Is it right or is it wrong? Don't follow your heart. Think about yourself. Are you happy? Does it make you happy? It's not about if you're happy or not happy. Is it right or wrong? The Jewish way is it right or wrong? Not if it feels good. Not if it makes you happy. And that is the center. That's where it begins. There are also emotions. But if you start with what's right and what's wrong, but then be a human being and be warm, and then say there's beautiful things out there that are good to me. But why is it good for me? Because it's right. First I have to ask myself, is it a right thing or a wrong thing? And then in that world, that's something that's right for me, I have to now, if I want to get emotional about it, how this thing that's right is going to make me good or happy. And first I have to ask the question about intellectually. That's the whole study of Torah. What is the study of Torah? The study of Torah is because Torah says what's right and what's wrong. That's why a Jew has to study Torah. He has to read the Torah. It's to awaken his godly soul to look for what's right and what's wrong. And that's why the study of Torah is a more intellectual pursuit than an emotional pursuit. Prayer is something emotional. But when you have to ask yourself, this right or wrong, it's not what makes you happy. Happiness is important. But the center is right and wrong. And that's how you should be happy. And that ultimately is going to be the real happiness, because in the end, if it's wrong, then you'll feel guilty, and we have a conscience, and we still have a godly soul. You can't shake off the godly soul. So if you're going to say, I'm just going to think about what's happy, and I'll take shortcuts, then you're going to crash eventually. Because since this thing is wrong, it's going to catch up with you. So let's follow this inside a little. And from the head, the godly soul spreads throughout the body, using the body to express what's right and what's wrong. So the godly soul also uses the body. When we're doing what's right, and our body becomes an instrument of the godly soul's motivations. And also the heart, on the right side of the heart, which doesn't have blood. Now, what does it mean? The left side has blood, the right side doesn't have blood. we know biologically both sides of the heart have blood. It's pumping the blood. I'm just translating literally. What does he mean over here? The difference between the right side of the heart and the left side of the heart. And the emphasis of blood is in the left side, while the right side, the emphasis, it's not so blood. No, there is something there. Physically there is. So the Rebbe explains it like this. But it's a bit of a lesson in biology. And I put notes in you read it from the biology text. The blood that circulates our body has two paths. The blood circulates our body, it comes to the heart, and the heart, the right side of the heart, the right ventricle receives deoxygenated blood from the right atrium. It pumps the blood to the lungs to get oxygen. What he means over here, it's not just blood, mush. The blood needs oxygen. It's the right side of the heart that pumps the blood to be oxygenated. And that's when the blood becomes red, bright red. Then it goes throughout the body and it does what the blood's supposed to do out the body. Right? But what pumps the blood into to the lungs to get the oxygen, that's the right side. The left side pumps it towards the body. So here's the difference. Oxygenated blood has air. We breathe in the lungs, that we get oxygen. And what's air? The oxygen is a life source. We need oxygen to breathe. We need oxygen in our blood. It's something it's a gas. It's something that's intangible. It's not just the blood cells. The blood cells become more refined blood cells because they become oxygenated. That's the right side. That's what he means, the right side. Similarly, emotions. There's emotions that get spiritual oxygen. That we ask ourselves what's right and what's wrong. Is this emotion a healthy emotion? Everything that feels good is right? Or is it purple blue blood? There's no oxygen in your blood. You're feeling that, but I have feelings. What kind of feelings? Are they healthy feelings? The head tells us what's right and what's wrong, and just the oxygenation process for our selfhood. So emotions, yes, emotions by nature are self-centered, but is it a healthy self-centeredness? Or is it not a healthy self-centeredness? And that is what it says over here. Leiv chacham liyaminai. The verse says, the heart of a wise person is on his right side. There's the right side of the heart and there's the left side of the heart. The left side of the heart it represents where the animal soul is centered. It's pure blood. The right side of the heart is refined emotion represented. V'hi avas Hashem kirish be'esh shal heves b'leiv maskil ma'avinu mizboinu b'data ma'ashamoich m'dvar ma'oinu m'sahava. What kind of emotions are, so to say, on the right side? It's a love for Hashem, a love for what's right, a refined love, not just love. Happiness. What kind of happiness? It's a happiness that is based on truth. It's a happiness based on what's right. And that's what we always have to ask ourselves. The joy of Hashem's glory, not self-glorification. You're so thrilled. The whole, whatever the media shows and the celebrities, it's all about self-glorification. It's all about self-glorification. It's the beauty, tiferes of self, not tiferes Hashem. It's a beautiful, beautiful world out there. Hashem is a master artist. And if you study Torah, you see the beauty of Torah. And if you study Chassidus and Kabbalah, you see the beauty of understanding so to say, as much as we can of the nature of the spiritual dimension. It's awesome. There's the beauty of people who do mitzvahs, noble people, idealistic people. It's a beautiful world out there. Is that what gets you excited? These are the people who should give an opinion about what's going on in the world. Who's giving an opinion? This celebrity, that celebrity, this Meshuggah, that Meshuggah who's cheating and doing all the Meshuggas. Because it's about happiness that starts in the heart, not in the head. It starts with the animal soul, not with the godly soul. There's the glory of Hashem. The first door said they cheker. Ve'ein sof v'tachlis k'mavu b'makam acher. V'chein shar midas kedosha shebelev heim b'chabad sh'amaychem. So ask yourself, we have to ask ourselves, to put it practical. A person has, let's say, a negative feeling. He spoke about anger. Anger. So a person's angry. He's boiling. You feel the emotion in the heart. Someone insulted him. Someone cheated him. Oh boy. So he's boiling. It's coming from the heart. Why is he boiling? Because someone touched him in a bad way. It's about him. It's about me. So now, if he puts himself into the mode of the godly soul, so he's going to start looking, okay, I'm angry. So first of all, why am I angry? Because he touched my ego. He touched my ego, so I'm angry. But I shouldn't let him control me that way. So now I'm getting all balled up. I can't eat supper. I spoke harshly with my wife. Had no time for my kids. I'm so absorbed with this mishigas. So he's moving himself away from the feelings. That's even as a human being. I shouldn't let that person control me. So what should I do? Oh, should I get back at him? So now what's going to happen if you're going to get back at him? You're going to hurt him. What's the point over there? If he goes a step deeper, it says in Tanya that someone who someone who loses his temper, it's like idol worship. Why, if you lose your temper, it's idol worship? What's the connection? Idol worship is you believe that there's another God, Chas v'Shalom, and not Hashem. Hashem created heaven and the earth. Then idol worshippers believe that there's another person who controls our life, controls the world, or created the world, and so on. But I lost my temper. Someone stepped on me and hurt me, and so I lost my temper. So it's an instinct. It's animalistic. It's low. It's vulgar. Okay. But it's like worshiping God, worshiping idols. So he explains in Tanya, he says, if you really believe in God, then what happened to you was supposed to happen. So that person who hurt you, he couldn't hurt you if it wasn't meant that you should be hurt. So now he stole from you $1,000. If Hashem didn't want you to lose $1,000, you would have not lost, that person wouldn't be able to take away $1,000. You have to ask yourself, why did you lose $1,000? Maybe you didn't give enough tzedakah. Maybe you're supposed to give $1,000 tzedakah, and you didn't give $1,000 tzedakah, so you lost $1,000. You have to make some kind of a calculation. But that person, if it wasn't meant for you to lose $1,000, that person can't take your $1,000 away. Now, even though it was meant that you should lose $1,000, that doesn't justify the guy who stole it from you. That guy wasn't allowed to steal. And if it was meant that you should lose $1,000, so then a tree would fall on your car and it would cause $1,000 of damage, you'd have to pay $1,000. You would lose $1,000 because it was decided up there that you're going to lose $1,000. So are you accepting Hashem's judgment on you, or you're not accepting Hashem's judgment on you. Nothing can happen to you if Hashem didn't want it. And if bad stuff is happening, you have to make, the Gemara says, that if someone sees suffering come upon him, yifashresh b'maisav, he should do tshuva, he should check himself. Why is this bad things happening to him? So therefore, he shouldn't lose his temper. What do you mean you lose your temper? That means you're forgetting that everything comes from Hashem. Now, you could, take that person to court or to Beis Din while he stole your $1,000. Because he's not allowed to steal the $1,000. And you can get back $1,000 from him if the Beis Din says you prove it in your case. Because you are entitled to make a case against him because it's none of his business. He's not Hashem. He's not God, so he has no right to take your $1,000. And he's going to be punished because he had a choice. He had free choice to steal $1,000. So I wasn't looking, so he stole my $1,000. So he had a free choice, and it's his thing, and he's a sinner, and therefore he has to do tshuva. But if it wasn't meant for me to lose $1,000, then it wouldn't have been. Now this takes a religious person to feel such an attitude. It's a certain meditation and a certain faith, or betachin, or trust in Hashem, that these bad things that happen to me, well, it's a faith. Betachin is more complicated than what I'm saying. Trust is that it wouldn't happen. But if it did happen, betachin is a little different than what I'm saying. Betachin is that I trust it's not going to happen. But faith is that if it happened, I'm accepting Hashem's judgment. Baruch dayin hems. Kishem shemavarach al hatoiv kach mavarach al hara. You're supposed to accept Hashem's judgment against you. So, for example, that could be anger management. That would be looking at it intellectually. So I'm angry. Is this anger? This anger, why should I be angry? It's self-therapy, self-meditation. So it starts with analyzing oneself and seeing where these things are coming from. So here's what we're ending today over here at that point. The center of the godly soul is in the brain. It's ask not if it feels good, ask if it is ideologically good, if it's right. And the center of emotion is in the heart. It's about me, what I feel. And if we can define things that go, that's an exercise if you want this week. Think everything that we're doing, is it coming from the godly soul, from animal soul? So this is the diagnosis, the self-diagnosis. The Chassidim have to be smart. So that, the word that they used to is, achassid of zayin akluger. Akluger. Because the animal, our animal soul, the snake, is shrewd. So you have to be smart. And next week we're going to go more into the two sides of the battle. But now we see where each one is coming from. Good evening.